Yes, the Cleveland Browns are 5-3. And to this point, this team has done a tremendous job of obviously a lot of injuries, overcoming those, a stout defense, but is about to get real for the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to break it all down as Pete Smith returns to Locked On Browns, which starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd just keeps on growing. Join the everyday crowd by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. As I said, Pete Smith in. You can now catch all of Pete Smith's work over at the OBR. The podcast with Bree Browns Bites still exists. You're obviously going to get a ton of information over there. And Pete, first off, obviously, congratulations, new home for the OBR. I think this is a great pairing, obviously, of what you do, of what they do. But we got, some stuff to talk about here. Obviously, yesterday, an absolute annihilation of the Arizona Cardinals. And as much as it is a great moment, a lot of it, and the biggest takeaway, obviously Deshaun back, for the most part, looking pretty good. But, obviously I'll lay this on to you. This is the biggest question for the next 9 games for this team. And this is the biggest question as far as whether or not this team can A, make the playoffs, B, make noise in the playoffs, Pete. I mean, it's always been about 4. And, for last year, obviously, missing 11 games, there was only so much you could do in 6. Now, missed time again this year. Somehow this team has treaded the water a lot better at 5-3. He is certainly responsible within that 5-3 record. But this team, even with a great defense, a lot of this is going to come down to just what number 4 is and hopefully what number 4 can be.
Look, I mean, it's all there in front of them. They can obviously the big focus right now is on the 2 divisional games, but they play a bunch of very beatable teams. And they play the Rams. Granted, it's in LA, but it's the Rams. They play the Bears. Houston's going to be tougher than you thought it would be, but I don't look at the schedule and go, particularly with Deshaun Watson back, even if he's not at 100%, you're back into being able to say that they can beat anyone on their schedule. Whereas, and the one game that no one thought they could win, other than Jake Burns, was the San Francisco 49ers. And they won that game. So, I mean, it's bizarre how resilient this team is. And the despite everything they're losing on offense, they continue to find a way to work. But with Watson back and hopefully some other things clicking, that they have some upside on that. In addition to the fact the defense, as good as it is and as good as it looked yesterday, can still get better.
Now, sticking here, with obviously Deshaun, Pete, and, look, the Amari Cooper thing, it's going fantastic. Amari is, 300 and change away from first Cleveland Browns receiver to put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And he's just been, it's just your typical, lunch pail guy. Punches the clock, punches in, punches out, and you know exactly what you get from Amari Cooper. But the issue is, and I don't think the way it was working with Donovan Peoples-Jones, it was going to change much anyway. But there's got to be a little bit more here. They've got to find a way, obviously, to get a higher, involvement with David Njoku. You've got to get more out of Elijah Moore, and you certainly got to find to get somebody, if not somebody's else involved within this passing game. because, you see the Josh Allens of the world. The Josh Allens of the world. You see the Joe Burrows of the world. You certainly see Patrick Mahomes. And it's a slew of guys who can make plays for them through the passing game. The Browns need to basically deepen that rotation of guys that can be successful with Deshaun.
I mean, you'd like to think that Watson means you'd like to think he's a rising tide, and as a result would lift all boats. That the more success he has, the more opportunities there are going to be for everyone else. I did take it as a positive that he was 9 of 11 going to the combination of Amari Cooper and David Njoku against the Cardinals. This season, it's often felt like it's either one or the other, not both. So that's a step in the right direction. But there are other options. Elijah Moore is the one that stands out the most. I think he's finding his niche in this offense, and now it's just a matter of him and Watson being on the same page. But like Jerome Ford is a really nice outlet, receiving threat. And you've got some of these other players that can step up. Marquise Goodwin, in the protocol, as a guy who can stretch the field. You've got Cedric Tillman. You've got David Bell, Harrison Bryant, Jordan Akins. None of these guys are stars, but they are players that do their job and can get open. And potentially as early as this week, we're going to see what happens if the Ravens take one or potentially two of those options away. Where does the ball go? But like I said, it's a positive that you saw Cooper and Njoku such a focus. Obviously Njoku didn't have a ton of yards. Felt like he was about forcing 2 missed tackles away from having a monster day. But that the ball is going to the right people. The guys you want to have the ball are getting it. So I think that's something that can carry over. Watson being a passing threat can potentially open things up for the running game more, which has been inconsistent to say the least. Even if it's trending in the right direction, they don't have sort of a feature back. It's the ultimate by committee thing, even though Ford and maybe Pierre Strong is the most talented, offer the most talented, whereas Kareem Hunt just sort of slams forward for a few yards, but he's made a number of key runs in that role. So it's been useful, even if it's wildly inefficient.
Well, and you look at where Jerome Ford is right now, 600 total yards. You obviously figure the Browns are, with a 16-game schedule, there is no true halfway point anymore. 17-game schedule. 9 games to go, on pace for 1,200 total yards. You pair that, he's in a committee approach, obviously, with Kareem Hunt and with Pierre Strong. So certainly something interesting to monitor the way it works there. Just real quickly here, the news obviously somewhat positive for Jedrick Wills. They do believe there is a return date. We know it's a minimum of 4 weeks. We'll see how long it actually turns out to be. And, Pete, we've been critical. I've been critical. I know you have been critical. But sometimes, and we'll see how it works out, because James Hudson, I think as a swing tackle and the role they've been using him in is fantastic. Actually using him as a tackle certainly brings up some other questions here as far as, how successful he can be. But, 3 offensive tackles on IR, 1 slated to return, not an advantageous situation for this team to be in right now.
Yeah, you can't keep Jed Wills down. For all the criticism people have of him, he's shown remarkable toughness. He's played through some significant pain in his career. So it stood out when he was, doubled over, grabbing at his leg when he was down. And Jed Wills, look, he's not the future at that position, but he has played better in recent weeks. He stabilized things, and you saw some improvement there in terms of the product. So they will miss him. Is a huge drop off to James Hudson III. Maybe James. He's typically been a good run blocker, and just not a great pass blocker. You're hoping that he's going to be able to sort of stabilize in pass protection. Obviously, that could be problematic, particularly these next 2 weeks. But they may also get a little boost because he's a big, strong man who just shoves people down the field. And that has been very useful for this team. And to his credit, he stepped in, yesterday he played both tackle spots.
Yep. True swing tackle. Yep.
So he's been ready. He's been able to step in. Look, it's a little bit different when you are the opponent is now game planning for you as opposed to you're jumping in there and doing it. But look, the Browns have played and won and played reasonably well on offense when they've gotten really bad tackle play. The interior is the key for this group. If they succeed in the middle with the guards and Ethan Posick, they can move the ball and they can find a way to create on offense. It's certainly not great to be this many tackles down this far into the season, but it's also not necessarily the end of the world.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, I mean, I'm not saying DeJuan Jones is going to make anybody forget about the play that Jack Conklin and his level, but you've obviously gotten a really, really significant, I don't want to say upgrade is certainly the wrong word, but, significant insurance policy. But the key to it all is, would you rather have Jedrick Wills and still be playing with PJ Walker or Dorian Thompson Robinson, or would you rather have Deshaun Watson back? And Deshaun Watson, what he's being paid for, what the Browns gave up for him asset-wise, he is supposed to be the guy that, like you said, is supposed to have this team rise above. So, if you're getting 4 back, but the trade-off is, unfortunately, you lose Wills for a little while, you're going to take that 10 times out of 10. We're going to continue on here, get Pete's thoughts here, because, look, I've been covering this team for 7 years. I have not been around this team like you all have. But for me, the answer is simple. Yes, this is the best defense I've ever seen in the 7 seasons I've covered this team. But we're going to have Pete go a little bit more in depth on that. Your latest Locked On Browns continues, and I appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. An example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. If you would put together a lineup yesterday of Deshaun Watson, Jerome Ford, and Amari Cooper, and you had chose the over on all 3, that ticket would have hit and you would have gotten paid. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We continue on here, your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd just continues to grow. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube page and join the party. And, of course, the show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, you talk about a 58 yards net yesterday. You talk about a second game, I believe was 93 yards net against the Tennessee Titans. Week 1, 142 yards net against the Cincinnati Bengals. There's been some times where obviously they kind of caught chunk play-itis, so to speak, beginning of the Seattle game, certainly a couple other games where somebody was just maybe a little bit ahead of Jim Schwartz and found a niche, found a hole somewhere. But Pete, first of all, anybody who knows Pete and I and the amount of time Pete has been on Locked On Browns, we have screamed about defensive line depth for 7 years. And if you guys, you can go back in the archives, 7 years now, trying to put together something that resembles what the Browns have now up front. First off, Pete, some thoughts on that and what it's like to just have a unit like this. And then secondly, this defense and where it probably ranks, obviously, albeit a little early, with some of the best defenses in the Browns' history.
So the defensive line has been a lot of fun to watch. Shelby Harris was a huge asset. Certainly showed that yesterday with the sack fumble. Dalvin Tomlinson, yesterday was sort of the culmination of stuff he's been doing because, 2.5 sacks, and all of those were him just staying in his gap, collapsing the pocket, and just pouncing on the quarterback when he stepped up. But Maurice Hurst is this year's Ethan Posick. He's
100%.
You sign a guy for basically the league minimum, who has started games in the NFL. With Posick, it was largely ineffectiveness and the fact he plays center. He's sort of out there. The Browns signed him. He has what warranted Pro Bowl consideration last year. He's one of the best centers in the league. He gets signed to an extension. Maurice Hurst misses basically 2 years with injury. The Browns take a flyer on him. And, even my thought going into the season was, yeah, he's very talented. Let's see how long he can go. And whatever you get out of him is basically a bonus because of his injury history. And he's been phenomenal. He's been a huge piece of this rotation, which has allowed them to play, nickel personnel and those sort of, whether you want to call it NASCAR or whatever, they can put fast guys on the field who can get after the quarterback. And Maurice Hurst has been everything that they've dreamed he could be. And now you have to sit here and go, there's got to, they're going to obviously wait to see what happens. But then if you get to the end of the season, you'd be like, we can't possibly let this guy walk out of here. I don't expect he's going to make a ton of money just given his situation. But you're sitting there going, he's perfect for what we have and everything else. And, whether it's Darius Smith or Okoronkwo or some of the young guys, Alex Wright has done a nice job in a role that's more befitting for what he's ready to do. He's just powerful. Even, yesterday, Sione Takitaki's interception was spurred in part because Isaiah McGuire just drove the offensive lineman right into the quarterback's lap. So they've got this just never-ending rotation. And Isaiah McGuire played basically his first meaningful snaps on Sunday. They've still got Siaki Ika, which thank God he has not been put in a position where he has to play, that they are good enough to be able to say, we'll let you develop at your own pace. And if you show something, we'll put you out there, which I think is all positive and has been the key to the defense. Yes, Jim Schwartz deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. He's put the Browns in a scheme that makes sense for the personnel they have and the talent that they have. And it allows them to play fast and do everything else. It's been great. But even you listen to the DBs on this team, whenever they ask what's the secret sauce to this defense, their immediate reaction is defensive line. It's defensive line. Grant Delpit, defensive line. The second-year corner Martin Emerson, defensive line. Their pressure just makes everybody's job easier. That's where it all starts. Trying to put this into context, to me, it's the best defense the Browns have had in decades. Somebody will probably make an argument for one of those teams in the 80s where they were really cooking. In the 1994, the Browns had a very good defense. I think the Browns defense this year is better. Certainly they want to get back to being able to play the defense that has just shut 5 teams down, even though they didn't win all those games because they lost to the Steelers and they lost to somebody else in that frame I'm not thinking of. But the fact of the matter is that the Browns in the 5 games where the defense has been just dominant, they've given up 305 total rushing yards, and 106 of those came against the 49ers. That's 61 per game. When they allow the run, it's 100 and something, 120 or so in the games where they've lost to the Ravens, the Colts, and then the Seahawks. I mean, they beat the Colts, but lost the Seahawks. It's a
Ravens, Steelers, and Seahawks.
But it's an indication of where this thing really starts. And when the Browns can stop the run, they put teams in obvious passing situations. They can pin their ears back, and they are a nightmare to deal with. So I'm sure there's somebody out there who's going to point out to a better defense, and maybe there's somewhere on the margins where they might be better. I think you have to adjust for eras in some respects, but this defense is phenomenal. And like I said, I think it has room to improve. I think there are areas where it can continue to get better. Sione Takitaki is one that stands out to me immediately because he's still coming back from that ACL situation, and it looked awkward for him. It's looked clunky for him running around, and he's struggled at times. He's battling through it, but they've gotten really good play out of a lot of players. And I think there are guys that are going to continue to get better. I don't think people realize how good Juan Thornhill has been. I think at some point he's going to have a game where he gets to do basically what Dalvin Tomlinson did. The corners are only going to get better with age. Now you're getting contributions from Cam Mitchell, who's done a really, really nice job in small sample size, but he fits perfectly for what they want to do. So there's just a lot to enjoy. And I think the Cardinals game sort of showed you the how they can be good when they function as a team. Whereas in some of these games, it's still Myles Garrett and 10 other guys. It's just the 10 other guys are a hell of a lot better than the 10 other guys they've had in past years.
Yeah. Two things. Look, the Juan Thornhill thing is, obviously playing free safety, and this is where we saw the worst of John Johnson III. The last line of defense, a guy who was never equipped to be the last line of defense and ended up having to be the last line of defense a lot. Juan Thornhill, I think, is being underappreciated because he's never getting to the last line of defense. So for Juan Thornhill, it's like I'm kind of out here, but whenever I really have the opportunity to make an impact is very, very minimal. Maurice Hurst, when this all went down, they brought me Maurice Hurst in. And if you would have said we're getting to some extremely meaningful games, extremely meaningful spots within games, and it's second and long, third and long, and the Browns defensive line is Myles Garrett, Za'Darius Smith, Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo, and Maurice Hurst. And it's a positive. It's a damn positive because that's how good Maurice Hurst has been. Obviously these signings, when you take them, literally, they're a scratch off. The Browns got the best possible version of Maurice Hurst, and Maurice Hurst, as much as he deserves it, has gotten, a lot of good luck, which has not always been the case for Maurice Hurst since his Michigan career ended and through his time in the NFL. So that has been great to see. Baltimore Ravens this week. We're going to get some thoughts from Pete as they get ready. As much as yesterday was an absolute, high school kids beating on some middle schoolers, it's going to be a whole different story on Sunday. We're going to get to all that. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Thanks for everybody for being along for the ride. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, you name it, they got it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Segment 3, closing out your latest Locked On Browns. Pete Smith, now of the OBR, joining here. I appreciate all of you for making Locked On Browns your first listen. Of course, the everyday crowd keeps getting bigger. Join the Locked On Browns YouTube page. And, of course, Locked On Browns always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. Pete, and this is where it's tough because, obviously, everybody's riding the high of yesterday and a victory like that. But you got to kind of put it in perspective. The Arizona Cardinals, could have tried to play Kyler Murray yesterday, could have tried to make this a ball game, had no interest in doing so. So, yeah, we talk about this all the time, Pete. Yesterday was a lot of batting practice for the Cleveland Browns. But you're going from batting practice to basically one of the best or hottest teams in the NFL this week, and it is on the road.
Yeah, I mean, look, Arizona is what it needed to be, which the defense gets to dominate. The offense gets to sort of get tuned up, particularly with Deshaun Watson and getting him some reps and confidence heading into Baltimore. But, yeah, look, I mean, if the Browns don't beat the Ravens this week, the division's basically done. And now they are entirely focused on a wild card, which in many ways might have been what they were always going to have to do. But certainly – if you can get a win here and assert yourself back into that conversation, that's the goal. And, that's where you get frustrated with the way they lost the Seahawks and the Steelers. That, you can talk yourself into being, hey, the Browns should be 7-1. But the fact is they're 5-3. And if they can get a win against a 7-2 Ravens team, suddenly they're right there. 5-4. And now there's a path to get in the wild card. I think it's attainable, but those are the stakes, and this is the biggest game they've had this year because of those stakes. Having said that, the Browns played the first game. The defense will have to make some adjustments given the way the Ravens were able to control the line of scrimmage and run the ball, which opened everything else up, even though it really amounted to 2 great drives by Lamar Jackson playing at the peak of his powers. But offensively, that group, led by Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and not my favorite game plan from Kevin Stefanski. Basically took a gas can out there, dumped it all over themselves, and lit the match. So it's hard to get a true read on that. But the Ravens are good. The Browns have their work cut out for them, but the Browns have proven with games against the 49ers and the Colts and some of these other teams, you're sitting there going, how are the Browns going to do this? And yet they've been able to hang in there and do it. And this may be a game where the Browns can, at the very least, make it so it gets decided in the waning moments of the game, which has been a lot of their games this season.
And, sometimes maybe it's just going to take somebody else. Maybe, you can't always count on, Myles Garrett. Like I said earlier, you can't always count on Amari Cooper. Obviously, this is a game where the Browns, and everybody, oh, no, the Browns are going to have to run the football here. They're going to have to run the football. Number one, if you got Hudson in for Wills, that's what Hudson does best. And, you need to make the game short. The more Lamar is a spectator, the less he is making an impact on the game with the ball in his hands. We got plenty of time to break all that down, though, obviously. Early in the week, I know you're all still riding the high, and you should. Browns currently 5-3, 9 left on the slate here in the 2023 season. And for as much as, this team has taken some bumps and bruises and players in and out, they have found a way to right the ship offensively, defensively, and special teams has been outstanding to this point. He is Pete Smith. Make sure you're following @_Pete Smith _ check all of the work out now over at the OBR, the Orange and Brown Report. It was a great, obviously trade deadline acquisition as, Pete found himself a new home. I think Pete brings something to the OBR that they maybe did not necessarily have. And so it was a great marriage, obviously, between something that's been around for years and obviously, somebody who's been around for years. So great partnership there. Make sure you check out the podcast, Browns Bites, as Pete and Bree still continue to, go at it and put out, great content there. And the best part about it is you get a lot of Brown stuff and they have no issue going with a lot of real life stuff as well. Myself, now my 7th season here with you all, from 2017 to where this team is now, to actually talk about the possibility of extending a head coach, extending a general manager from where this place was in 2017, just absolutely blows my mind. So I appreciate you all for sticking around for the content every day. Everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, thank you so much. Join the everyday crowd and the everyday party by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And of course, the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB. And the LOB, let's go Browns.